Okay, so today I'm going to give an overview about one of the first products of the Data Commons. Its name is FAIRshake, and this is a part of KC1. So Owen just gave an overview about the full stacks and the KCs. So we are one of the KCs. And I'm going to give an overview, and then Daniel Clarke will give a live demo of this new app. And so FAIRshake is a tool that is developed to assess the compliance of digital objects with the FAIR principles or the FAIR guidelines. So for those of you who haven't heard of this now famous set of guidelines, they were published 2 years ago in a paper in Scientific Data, and they're suggesting that digital objects, datasets, tools, and other digital objects should be made findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And overall, so this is some more breakdown. We want to have global unique identifiers, rich metadata. The dataset should be on the digital object should be registered and indexed in searchable resources, retrievable by the identifier. Formal language should be used to represent the metadata of the resource, vocabulary, and qualified references. And also there should be a license and versioning of the resources. So this paper got enormous amount of attention, and as you see by this Almetrics score, it's ranked 105th of all papers of its age out of almost 300,000 publications. And the issue with these FAIR guidelines, that everybody sort of like agrees that this is sort of like the way to go, but those principles are very abstract. So how can we go from those principles into like more practical application of those principles in NIH funded research and in general? So the community started to develop what we call metrics and rubrics that can be used to assess the fairness of digital objects. So a metric, it's not what is used in a typical mathematical type of reference. A metric is simply a question that asks about one of those aspects of fairness, whether a digital object is compliant. For example, here it's a screenshot of a metric from FAIRshake that asks whether the digital object is machine readable, has machine readable metadata that describe the digital resource. And a rubric is simply a collection of those questions or those metrics. And this is an example of a rubric that was submitted to FAIRshake by Repositive, which is one part of one of the full stacks of the Data Commons. So again, what is FAIRshake? So FAIRshake is a system, it's a software platform that allow you to match digital objects with rubrics and then perform either manual or automated FAIR assessment. And then those assessments are stored in this repository and visualized as an insignia. So this idea of an insignia visualizes the level of fairness of a digital object, where each square represents an answer to a metric. So positive answers are in blue and negative answers are in red. And we will see more of this in the demo. So maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months ago, there was no real set of metrics and rubrics published yet. And we knew that they are being developed by the community, but we wanted to start assessing the fairness of digital objects. So we created 3 rubrics, and each of them had 9 questions. And one of them was for tools, one of them was for datasets, and the third one was for repositories. And then we manually evaluated all of the digital resources. One of our projects was to evaluate all of the digital resources that are on the AGR websites. And this is a summary of this project where we try to evaluate 132 tools and about 15 data sets that are hosted on those model organisms websites. And then we created Jupyter notebooks that have interactive visualization of the summary of those results. So those were done by a manual assessment by different members of our team, and we met with the data stewards that represent the AGR consortium, and we show them the results of those assessments. So for example, just to make it a little bit more concrete, this is the for the 130 tools, these are the average scores for their tools. So you can see that they're doing very well with ontologies, describing the tools, providing contact information. But things like APIs, versioning, and source code are scored relatively low. So this is just a plot, one of the plots that we provided for them. And now they are in a process of trying to improve their scores. So this is an exciting sort of like cycle where basically the main purpose of this tool is to inform people about how to make the resources more accessible, more findable, and give them feedback about things that they may forgot or were not aware of. So these assessments were done manually, and where we're going is towards a more automated assessments. Another important development was that the team that published the FAIR guiding principles is also members of that group that published that paper are a part of our team and other parts of the Data Commons. And recently they published a set of universal FAIR metrics. So those universal FAIR metrics are registered in the FAIRshake system. And this is an example of a universal metrics. It's just asked for whether the resource have a license. And this is the entry of the FAIR metrics rubric that was very recently added. So just a few words about automated assessments. dbGaP have a public FTP site that you can access, and I guess it's a very good thing that that site has machine-readable metadata that gives information about each of those studies. So very rapidly, in now that we have this ability to do automated assessment, we could write a script that scrapes several of those FAIR compliant metadata elements that we are looking for, and we were able to give a score to each study based on the elements that are present or missing from all of the studies in dbGaP, including the top med studies. And this is now, just this morning, was added to the FAIRshake repository. So those automated assessments are made possible based on providing machine-readable metadata about digital objects. And the Data Commons in general, as Owen also showed in his slide, are converging on some standards that include schema.org, bioschemas, JSON-LD, JSON schema, and the DATS JSON model, and also Open API and Smart API. So those things are also used by the recently published Google Dataset search. And I would leave it there and pass the baton to Daniel Clarke, who will give a live demo of FAIRshake.
Okay, so this is FAIRshake, a tool for assessing digital objects for their fairness. Beyond making assessments, FAIRshake facilitates the community development and reuse of FAIR metrics by allowing the development of rubrics which group specific existing metrics. This helps accommodate diverse types of digital objects and assessments while encouraging community consensus where it comes to measuring fairness, which is the metrics themselves. So FAIRshake exposes a search, and this allows you to search everything from projects, digital objects, the rubrics, and the metrics. So I'm just going to search Flybase because this is something we've assessed as part of the Alliance assessment. And you see the search results come with these blocks. These cogs are a filler image, whereas any image can be provided for any resource. And we also get this insignia, which is a visualization of its fairness. If we hover over the boxes, we can see essentially what metric was being evaluated, what the score currently is, and we can also click these to get more information about that specific metric. If we click the Flybase itself, we get to a landing page for this digital object, and essentially it gives us a little bit more information potentially, as well as a URL to the existing site. It also shows us associated projects and rubrics. These associations enable this digital object to be part of a collection of digital objects. It can also be associated with different projects, but currently this one is only associated with the Alliance. It also helps us associate rubrics. So these are rubrics which represent the metrics we wish to evaluate it based on, but it's not necessarily exhaustive. This is ultimately a recommendation by the creator of this element. I go to the Alliance project. We see that there's a lot more associated digital objects, and in fact, there's many pages of them. The insignia here, as you can see, is not a basic square, but in fact 3 squares. This is because this insignia is in fact an aggregate of all of the FAIR assessments within this resource. And this particular project has tools, data sets, and repositories, meaning they needed a lot more different metrics and in fact 3 different rubrics to evaluate all of them. We have some kind of interactive and live analytics that can get generated on the fly. And once this loads, we can see essentially we get an overview of which metrics are actually passing and which are not, kind of as a global view with all of the objects in this project. We can also get breakdowns based on what rubrics are actually in use. As you can see, we've mostly used the tool rubric here, as well as what were the answers to those different questions. And, you know, this can kind of drive, you know, what metrics make sense and which objects are lacking in terms of their fairness. Now I'm essentially going to, so FAIRshake is built to facilitate this community development within FAIRshake, but we also want to actually extend outside of FAIRshake. And to that end, we developed a Chrome extension. Chrome extension essentially allows us to add programmatic functionality to your web browser based on whichever page you're visiting. By clicking the Add to Chrome button and adding this extension to our page, we can click it on any website, indeed even on this website, and see a insignia for that website. Because this is the Chrome Web Store, naturally we have not evaluated it for fairness. But if we go to the familiar Flybase, we can click it and see that it gets populated with the insignia representing not just Flybase, but in fact all of the subtools that come on this domain. This is because we use fuzzy matching on the URL, and essentially Flybase has multiple objects. It has different tools, which all have their own assessments. If we wanted to look at the batch download tool and see its particular evaluation, we would see it when we visited that exact URL. From here, we can also submit an evaluation. To submit an evaluation and indeed to interact with FAIRshake beyond read-only access, we need to log in. FAIRshake enables you to use GitHub, OrchidID, or Globos to log in, or you can sign up, create an account with FAIRshake directly. But I'm just going to log in with GitHub because I'm already logged in. We see that when we begin an assessment, we're presented with this page where we have to confirm the target of our assessment. This is because just as we saw with Flybase's insignia showing multiple associated objects, it's possible that an assessment might come up with multiple objects. But in this particular case, we found one and only one, Flybase batch download. We also got an automatic association of the FAIRshake tool rubric, since that was the only rubric that was registered as an associated with that object. But any of these can be changed, and indeed we can select any rubric from the entire database of rubrics. We can associate a project with this assessment, and this allows that project to take advantage of that assessment when it comes to things like statistics and more. But that is optional, while these two are mandatory fields. If we confirm this, we see a form showing all of the questions that these metrics are asking, as well as yes, yes but, no, and no but answers. Yes but and no but are essentially for kind of maybe style answers. So if you do yes but, it really means that yes, they have an informative description, but perhaps it's not quite as informative as it could be, or the name is not quite as unique as it could be. And wherever applicable, you can add URLs that show perhaps where you found the information that you answered. And yeah, so you can go through this manual assessment of this digital object, and when you're done, you can submit the assessment. I'm not going to do this right now because it's long and arduous, and I have an assessment already for this object. If you don't have Chrome, you can't have a Chrome extension. So in fact, we developed a Bookmarklet. And what a Bookmarklet is essentially a JavaScript snippet which comes into a bookmark, right? So we kind of put some fancy JavaScript in the URL of the bookmark. And so if we go to a website, for instance, and we click it, we can get a similar evaluation, though perhaps not as nice as the Chrome extension, which is preferred, but it still will function just as well. The reason I've come to HarmonyZone is because I have not actually assessed this digital object yet, but HarmonyZone has something particular. So as you see, because it wasn't assessed, we get a gray insignia. But when I submit the evaluation, we're presented with a familiar page, but this time nothing was found. This is because this object doesn't yet exist in the database, and if I search for it, we'll see that I have some things, but I don't have this particular one, human brain tissue. So we can actually add it by clicking this plus, and we're prompted to find all this information about the object. I lost that information, so let's go back there, and we see that, let's get this information and try again. So we could put in the title and indeed the URL, which I have right here. And we can further describe it and add other information, but for the sake of time, I'm going to omit a lot of it. And for the rubric, I'm going to select the FAIRshake JSON-LD rubric. You'll see why in a moment. Now that I've created the object, you see it comes here, and we can now confirm and make the assessment. After confirming, essentially, what happens is our answers are pre-populated. Now, why did this happen? This is because we chose the FAIRshake JSON-LD rubric, and we can find that certain information within the JSON-LD were actually searched and were either found or not found. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about how this works shortly, but we can see here that some things weren't found, but we found citation information and we found actual description. So I'm going to submit this assessment and then talk a little bit about this JSON-LD. In order to enable this on your website, we've actually created a documentation which describes both how JSON-LD works and how to get it working on your site. JSON-LD not only powers FAIRshake, but it's actually being used in other applications such as the new beta Google Dataset Search and BioThings. Dataset Search by Google is meant to actually crawl different datasets throughout the web, and by providing this information in those datasets, it can show up on this page and put these fields in the correct place, showing users data from all types of different sources all in one place and looking the same way. Because of this, JSON-LD is a very important part of making resources fair, and FAIRshake has adopted it so that we can perform these automatic assessments and potentially even semi-automatic assessments, finding some information with the help of JSON-LD and some information with the help of a manual user. To see how this actually worked for HarmonyZone, we can try to actually use this. We can use this tool on HarmonyZone and see what's happening. Essentially, because HarmonyZone is exposing JSON-LD in its HTML page, we find that it creates a block here with that information. And this is the very information that FAIRshake is looking through to find things to put into the semi-automated assessments. So let's go back to FAIRshake. And also in terms of keeping interoperability and making FAIRshake work outside of itself, while the Chrome extension is one way to get it working on a page, the other way is for users, or rather people who own a page, to in fact embed the insignia themselves by using our client library. The client library makes it pretty quick and easy to embed an insignia for a given digital object on their page. With this 9-line snippet, they can get the insignia embedded wherever they like. Similarly, all of the things I showed and more are accessible through a REST API, and Python bindings have been created to show how you can interact with that REST API programmatically so that you can both create, search, and find digital objects, projects, rubrics, metrics, and also indeed perform assessments automatically through the API. We also use Smart API to document our REST endpoints and other community standards such as Core API and Django REST Framework API Explorer. People that made this possible are many, and I've tried to put showcase some of them here, but that, I think, concludes the gist of my presentation.